Hi students, I am going to introduce you to the topic bystander effect and also introduce you to the essential steps that are involved in the process of providing help. In the previous chapter, you must have understood what prosocial behavior is. Prosocial behavior is nothing but acting in a good manner and helping people who are in need of help. But is the prosocial behavior going to remain same in the presence of others? When you see a person who is in distress and there is nobody else around you, you will immediately go and help that person. But what will be your behavior when there is another person along with you? What will be your behavior when there are a group of people along with you? Will you go and help the person in distress with the same speed? Will you react immediately and help him out? This is the bystander effect. To put it more formally, bystander effect is the tendency on the part of the individuals to be less likely in providing help when others are present than when they were alone. This effect is nothing but emphasizes on the fact that generally when people are alone, they tend to react fast, offer help fast, but when they are with more number of people, the swiftness with which they act or the precision with which they offer help somehow do not exist. There have been numerous studies that have confirmed that people are less helpful even in emergency situations when there are others around. What accounts for this bystander effect? Why are people so not involved at all in offering help when there are so many others around them? There are quite a number of factors that are at work here, and conformity is one of them. The bystander effect very frequently occurs in ambiguous situations because people look around to see what the others are thinking about this particular emergency. Rather than you taking a positive step or the first step, what you will do in time of an emergency situation, you look into the faces of people around you and see what they are thinking, and then you will also react like them. So, you are trying to be conforming yourselves with the other people who are there along with you. We have the very famous, the murder of Kitty Genovese is a perfect example of bystander effect. How did social psychologists actually get interested in learning more about prosocial behavior? It all started off because of the murder of Kitty Genovese, who was a 28-year-old lady and was brutally killed to death. There were around 38 witnesses who saw her being murdered, clamoring for help, but none of these people came forward to help her. Do you know the kind of responses that were given by the others? A few said, "I thought it was a couple who was at a quarrel." Some others said, "Frankly, we were afraid to come out." There was another situation where the wife stopped the husband from going to help the lady because something might happen to her husband. There are a series of such explanations that have been given by the witnesses, 38 of them, none of whom had come out when Kitty was crying for help. We would have also read numerous situations like this, where people did not at all offer help to someone who was in need of help. But there are also situations where bystanders offer help to strangers who are in distress. They also risk their lives while offering help. The most influential and most thoroughly studied factors that affect prosocial responding is whether the potential helper is alone or he is with a group of others. The fact that this lone helper may offer help than a bystander who is part of a group is known as the bystander effect. greater the number of helpers, less is going to be the help that is given out to the person who is in need of help. Latane and Darley hypothesized that helping behavior becomes less likely with increasing number of people in the group. The proposal was first tested in an experiment in which each subject was led to believe that there was only one other person carrying on a discussion through an intercom system, or 2 other subjects were there or 5 others were there. Actually, there was only one real subject and a few tape voice recordings. And as soon as the discussion began, the stranger on the recordings gasped and seemed to be undergoing a seizure. What would be the reactions of the subjects? As predicted, the more fellow bystanders who appeared to be present, the less likely the subject was to provide help. Those who were alone responded within a minute, but those people who knew that there are 4 or 5 subjects along with them took 4 times more time than the lone subject to offer help to the person who was in distress. Therefore, the presence of others definitely has an effect on the prosocial behavior. It interferes with the swiftness with which you extend help. It interferes with the way you behave towards a person who is in distress. But why does this occur? You have seen that when the person was alone, he took minimum time to react, but when the person was with some other people in his group, he took a lot of time to react and offer help. There are quite a number of factors playing here in the mind of the individual. This is what Latane and Darley said, that at every stage there is a lot of deliberation going on in the mind of the helper. There is a lot of decision making process going on operating in the mind of the helper, and these act as interfering factors towards giving out a prosocial behavior. 3 such variables have been studied extensively. First variable is diffused responsibility. When you see a person falling on the road, you will not go and help him immediately when there are others along with you. You will say, "Oh, they are there, let them go and help." The other person also might think in the same manner. So, the responsibility is being diffused. You are not acting immediately because they are there, they might help, and then perhaps you will also pitch in to help the person who is in distress. When a number of bystanders are present there, there is likeliness that each person is potentially able to help. As a result, there is diffusion of this responsibility. Had it been just the singular you over there, your reaction would have perhaps been immediate. Once you see that there is diffused responsibility, then too there has to be that one person who will take the first move. When there is a recognized leader in the group, to organize what is to be done, the group will then get into action. Even without a leader, the actions of just one helpful individual. Now, the person who has come out first to help need not always be a leader, but there has to be some person who will have to take the first step. Someone has to bell the cat, right? So, he has to take the first step, and slowly all the other potential helpers will pull in to offer help to the person who is in distress. One main reason as to why people will not come forward for offering help is that they do not know what to do. They do not know how to do it. They may feel that there is some other better person, an informed person to tackle the situation than them. They may feel incompetent of their abilities. That is one of the reasons that presence of a leader or another model is of great importance in emergency situations. A leader can lead, and he can make all the potential helpers work in the direction that is desired. The direction obviously is to provide help to the one in distress. It has been pointed out that there can be a special problem involved in assuming responsibility to provide help. There is another factor that interferes with the prosocial behavior. The person may think if he goes and acts, he might further harm the distressed person. With this kind of a fear, he holds himself back from offering any kind of a help. Audience inhibition or fear of ridicule is another factor that acts heavily on prosocial behavior. Groups are found to inhibit prosocial behavior because the person faces fear of ridicule. What if the solution that he is offering is laughed upon? What if he is not helping in the right manner? What if something happens wrong only after he has given help? All these things and the inhibitions that the person has in himself and the presence of others in the group may act as interference in prosocial behavior. To act in a particular situation, the person has to stop whatever he is doing. He has to engage in an unreal and unexpected manner out of the ordinary behavior. An emergency situation itself is a shock for this person, and the expectation that he has to behave in a good manner, he has to help the other person who is in distress will be taxing on him, and before he takes the right decision, there is a lot of mental processes and decision making process going on in his mind. Once he arrives at a decision or a conclusion, his behavior will be in accordance with the decision he has taken. Lone bystanders help without much hesitation, but bystanders who are accompanied by many other people take quite a bit of time to decide what has to be done, and if one person has taken the lead, they are also more than willing to offer help. There is always an inhibition that what if others misunderstand you? What if they make a joke out of you? Generally, people think that, oh, let it be, why should I have to interfere? This is what happens, a daily occurrence of course. When we are on the road traveling, we see that a person meets with an accident. It may be a fatal one too. There are a few people who stop their vehicles, come and see what has to be done there. You might just peep out of your car window and then speed off from there. So, it is the kind of inhibition that is there within the helper that acts as an interfering factor towards extending prosocial behavior. Bystanders are sometimes strangers, are sometimes acquaintances. When they are strangers, the likeliness that you offer help is going to be less. When you know the other person, both of you might discuss something, have a plan of action and then act accordingly. So, if the bystander is a stranger, the chance that you offer help will become less. Probably you might take some time to strike a rapport with the person and then act immediately. When bystanders are acquainted, there is much less inhibition and help is offered readily. The third factor is pluralistic ignorance. This is a phenomenon whereby the bystanders assume that, oh, everything may be fine, and they just go off from the place. They arrive at this decision because when they look into the expressions of the other bystanders, they find that no one else is concerned. So, why should they be concerned? Without getting down to the facts of the situation. This is pluralistic ignorance. It is not just you alone, but there are many other people along with you who are also ignorant of the intensity of the situation there. This greatly interferes with the interpretation of the situation as an emergency and stops the people from acting in a prosocial manner. We have understood that because of the bystander effect, the potential helper is taking some time to help. What cognition is taking place in his mind before he actually decides to help? There are a series of steps that each individual goes through before he finally extends help. These are the essential 5 steps in the process of providing prosocial help. Latane and Darley developed a step-by-step description of the processes that keep on going in the mind of the helper when he has to help in an emergency. First one is noticing an event. For the person to help, the person has to first take notice of the event. He should understand that there is an emergency there. He should first notice it, and only then will he be able to think, okay, shall I help over there, or am I going to get late for my lecture or for my schedule? Sometimes such trivial things may come in the way of extending prosocial help. This is because of influence of time and the presence of others, which are important in deciding whether to help or not to help others. One example of the bystander effect that deals with time constraints is the Good Samaritan study that has been done by Darley and Batson in 1973. In this study, half the participants were told to prepare a talk on the Good Samaritan parable from the Bible. The remaining participants were told to speak about job opportunities for seminary students. Then there was a coughing confederate who needed help. The measure of helping in this case was whether students stopped to assist the coughing man or no. When these students arrived in the lab, the participants were divided into low hurry, medium hurry and high hurry conditions. The results of the Good Samaritan study proved that the topic of speech did not have any effect on helping. On the other hand, the conditions of time had a significant effect on helping. The more time that people had, the more likely they were to help. There is always a chance that the person has not taken notice of the event, or he is distracted because of other pressures that are playing on his mind, and he fails to notice the emergency and he rushes off from the place without offering any kind of help. Second situation, interpreting an event as an emergency. Once the person has noticed the event, he has to interpret that particular event as something that is calling for an emergency or urgent action. This interpretation will then make him move in a manner as to extending help, but here too, when there are other bystanders, he will not understand the level of seriousness that is involved in the situation quickly. Again, the pluralistic ignorance factor plays here. When he sees the expression on the faces of his neighbors or on the faces of his fellow members, he will misinterpret the situation, the gravity of the situation, and then he perhaps might leave without offering help. Research found that students who were alone would again offer help quickly than students who were with a group of other people. The bystanders interpret that the event as a non-emergency one. So, that is one of the possible reasons why they have left from the situation without offering any kind of help. The third step where there is a lot of decision making process goes on is assuming responsibility. Fine, you have noticed the event, fine, you have understood that it is an emergency situation, but are you willing to take the responsibility in this situation? Are you the kind of a person who can say, come what may, I am going to help you? If it is an accident and it is a police case, most of us would generally take a step back. We wait for some other authoritative figure, a leader figure, to step in and bell the cat. Assuming responsibility is one step where we wait for some other person to act, and we tend to diffuse our own responsibility. And when there are more people in the group, the responsibility is further diffused, and the time in which the help is going to be extended also is going to be longer than otherwise. Everybody is under an impression that, oh, he will help, oh no, that man will help, or someone else will help. But collectively, if all of them would help, probably they could have saved the life of the person also. Yes, situations may be such urgent ones too. So, we are here trying to understand how human behavior is when he is alone and when he is in presence of others. Another important stage or important step in the process of providing help is that of knowing how to help. People may help readily when they are fully aware of what has to be done with the victim. But if they are not aware of what has to be done, they generally tend to take a back seat. All the previous steps may be met, all the previous conditions may be met, but the person does not know how to tackle the situation, so he just lets it be. When he does not understand what has to be done, he will be unable to help. The person who is aware of the means and ways in which help can be given will probably be the first one to come out for help. Now, why does a person choose not to help in such cases? The person may feel that he does not have the appropriate skills. He feels that probably someone else has the right level of competence to offer help, and that is why he takes a back seat or he moves away from there without offering any kind of help. The final step before he provides help is deciding to implement the help. Fine, he has finished with his decision making process through all the 4 steps. Now comes the final stage, that is the decisive factor as to whether he will extend help or he will walk away from the situation. Even if you know what kind of help has to be given, you might decide not to interfere because you feel unqualified to help or you are too afraid of the costs that the situation might bring to you. For example, I was just now mentioning about a police case, an accident which would involve the police. You may be a doctor by profession and you know what has to be done with the victim. You know to give first aid, but you don't want to get into the situation because there would definitely be a police case. You will have to be the prime witness. You probably do not have time for fulfilling all the modalities that have to be looked into. So, there are quite a number of factors that play in the mind of the helper. When the costs involved are very high, the help is not at all offered and the person might walk away from there. The bystander effect also extends into the cyberspace. There was a study performed by Markey in 2000 and his experiment focused on the amount of time it took a bystander to provide assistance. The researchers also examined the effects of gender of an individual seeking help by measuring participants' response time. The perceived gender was manipulated by giving a female name and a male screen name in the chat room. The treatment conditions examined the number of people present in the chat and asked the stimulus question, "Can anyone tell me how to look at someone's profile?" The findings reflected a correlation between the number of people present in the computer mediated chat group and the amount of time it took for an individual to receive help. The higher the number of participants here, more the time they took to respond, more the time they took to offer someone the needed information. This research reveals that bystander interventions in internet chat groups also reflect the same patterns as interaction in a non-computer based environment. However, when a specific person was addressed by name, the help was given immediately. The most common criticism of the bystander effect is that there are other reasons as well why people choose not to help. For instance, people may assume that other bystanders are better qualified than them. They might feel that with their intervention, the situation might become worse. Another reason for this kind of social inaction also would be the image they give off to the bystanders. They want to save themselves in the eyes of the bystanders. So, what do? They simply do not respond to any kind of an emergency there. There are other factors also that might influence one's lack of helping behavior, and these are related to the fears that is associated with the perception. Such fears include being superseded by a superior helper. You are a competent helper, but you think that there is another person who performs better than you. So, oh fine, he is taking care of the situation, let me not interfere. So, there are quite a number of factors that actually interfere with a person making a pro-social move. We have understood that bystander effect plays a lot of importance in a person deciding whether he will offer help or no. There is yet another important feature that acts on his pro-social behavior. This is called the bystander calculus. Calculus? Yes, he calculates the rewards, the costs involved, and then decides whether he will offer help or no. The bystander calculus model involves the body, the mind, the physiological process, and a lot of other cognitive process too. According to Pilyavin, when we see someone in distress, we work our way slowly through these three stages before a response is given out. First, there is a physiological arousal. It registers in your mind that a person is in distress. Your first reaction would be to empathize with him. There is a physiological arousal, and greater such kind of an arousal, more chances are that you are going to help that person. Labeling the arousal. Getting aroused and feeling empathetic is one thing. Being overwhelmed by emotion is another thing. When you are extremely overwhelmed by emotion, the chances that you will offer help are very high. Evaluating the consequences. Before you take a step forward, you will evaluate the consequence of the step that you are going to take. You will choose an action which will help in reducing your personal distress, and that too at lowest cost. The major costs of offering help will involve a lot of time. So, if you are a busy person, say a doctor, you are worried about the time such kind of a treatment would involve and such kind of a time you have to spend with the police and giving out information and all that stuff. So, you would probably choose not to stay there or not to offer any kind of a help. Your time is the cost that you have to pay. Greater the cost, lesser is the likeliness that help will be offered. How can you bring about more pro-social behavior? How can helping be increased? Pro-social behavior is definitely a positive behavior. We may be in the situation in which the victim is in now. So, what are the ideal ways in which you can inculcate helping behavior in people? Media, the print media, the electronic media, all these media can definitely have a positive impact on inculcating the idea of helping in people. You can also reduce the ambiguity of the situation, reduce the diffusion of responsibility. People should be motivated enough to move forward. There should be no procrastination. Oh, let him come, he will do. There is some other XYZ who will come and who are more responsible, they will take care of the situation and all. There should be lesser diffusion of responsibility and more accountability shown by the people, and when this particular trait is shown, helping will occur more frequently. The people who are offering help also should not worry too much about their competence. Yes, you are not perfect, there is someone else who is better than you, but it should not be a factor that will stop you from extending help to a person who is in need of help, who is in an emergency. They should also reduce audience inhibitions. Think less about what others will think. Do not bother about any kind of criticisms that will come out of your act. What you are going to do is something positive, nothing negative at all. People should be educated about bystander indifference. They should be educated about bystander indifference. When people become more aware of this effect, of the bystander effect, they will then know that, okay, let us not waste time, let us render help immediately to the person who is in distress. In some cases, delay in extending help also might cost the life of the victim. The entire concept of prosocial behavior and the psychological foundations it comes in are found to be extremely relevant in the given situation, in the current scenario that our society is running in. Therefore, we have to make all efforts towards educating people in inculcating more helping behavior rather than diffuse each one of our responsibilities.